Okay, continue with siblings.
Okay, after Alice Marie, there was John Emmett.
And he's still, is he alive?
He's still alive.
So, okay, so right now it's December, what's our date? December 15th, 2009. So he's how old?
He's 80 something.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he lives in the Dakotas.
Yeah.
South? North?
He was probably South Dakota. He lives in Lemon, South Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
He went into the Marine Corps when he was 19 because World War II broke out. Japan came over and bombed Pearl Harbor. So they took all the boys that were willing to go. So he joined the Marines and he was in Guadalcanal. He was on Iwo Jima when they raised the flag. And
Yes, wasn't he one of the last ones that held the, pushed the flag up when they took that famous
no,
picture?
he was there though.
Oh, okay.
But he said they put a small flag up.
First.
And then the next day they came back and brought the big flag and he said they wanted volunteers to raise it and he said I was sitting right there but I was too darn tired. I wasn't gonna get up. He said Ira Hayes is the Indian. That's the last one with his hand up. Ira Hayes was he was an Indian from the Southwest. I don't think he was Hopi, but he was someplace down there.
And is that the war where they did the secret code language with Indian?
They had the Navajo code talkers.
Cool.
Johnny was a radio man, in the war. And then came Dean. Dean joined the army when he was 18. And he was shot in the leg in Normandy when they landed on the beach. On that big, big battle. Blitz. That wasn't the Blitz, was it?
That doesn't sound familiar.
Because the Blitz was over England, I think. Yeah.
And he died in the heart operation?
No.
It wasn't him? That was
Dean died
later.
later. Yeah, Dean died later. He worked in the mines in Leeds, South Dakota. Ferdinand became a sailor at the tender age of 16.
Was Ferdinand next?
Ferdinand was next. Ferdinand Albert. It was Dean Dwight. Ferdinand Albert. Yeah, he became a sailor. And so he saw action in the Pacific during the war. And then
From South Dakota to becoming a sailor.
I know. And then he enlisted a second time after the war, and then that was it. He became a merchant marine because he liked being on the waters. And then after Ferdinand was Happy, Aurelia May is her name, but everybody called her Happy. Called her Happy because she was happy. No, that was my dad's name. He gave it to her. He was called Happy. His name was, he was called Jack. And there used to be a radio show called Happy Jack O'Malley.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's where his name was Jack, so his neighbors would call him Happy. Or Hap. And then when Happy came along, he just gave her his name. But he never named anybody, he gave nicknames to anybody else after that. Well, me, sort of. And then after Happy was Curtis. Curtis Hayden. He went into he became a sailor too during the Korean War. That was like in 1953. And then there was Joy.
So what number is she?
She's fifth from the bottom.
Okay. So she's number 8.
Yeah. Her name was Garnet Elta.
Garnet Alta
Joy.
And she went by Joy, or was Joy in her real name?
Yeah, it was
on
Garnet
papers?
Elta Joy.
Oh, it was, okay.
And then after Joy was Mary Irene. And then there was Darlene Edith, Sylvia May, and Lanny Dwayne. That was all of us. Wow, that was enough kids.
Uh-huh. Okay, so tell about like the houses that they lived in before
yeah.
you were born.
Oh, the oldest ones, yeah.
Uh-huh. And where they were, whatever you know about them.
Effie, she was, she was older, so she wasn't home much when I was, well, she wasn't home at all when I was born, but her and Johnny and Dean and Ferdinand, they lived in a soddy.
Soddy, which is?
Which is like a house that's built into the, like the hillside, like it's like a hill and they cut it out. And so the back part was the earth, and then the front part they had built. So it was more like a
Regular house.
Yeah, in the front. But still,
So do you know how big it was, or certainly didn't have any electricity?
No,
or
it didn't
running
have
water.
no running
It was
water.
More like a cave. It sounds like.
Yes, basically that's probably what it was. I mean, it was.
Probably a mud floor.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Dirt floor.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
So they lived in there, and I don't know exactly. There's a picture of them, but I don't,
And they cooked on like a open fire in there, or did it have a stove, or?
Well, probably in the summer my mom cooked outside, because, but
Because your grandma used to cook outside.
yeah, But in the winter, they had wood stove, so the wood stove was in the front part,
Okay.
the front part of the house.
Uh-huh.
And then my father built a house. And
So do you know what he did? What he did for work at that time?
no, he
Yeah.
was just a farmer.
Uh-huh.
He just took care of his own land and his cattle and planted and.
So pretty much whatever they ate was grown on the farm.
Yeah.
They didn't go down to the local store other than
No,
for sugar and coffee.
there
And
was no local store to go to. So you grew your own, and sometimes you shared with your neighbor if they had a plentiful tomato crop and you had potatoes, then you traded, They would give you potatoes for tomatoes or vice versa or whatever, or beans or whatever. Yeah, and then he built a house, and that was where I was born.
so where was that? What town?
That was on the farm, just outside Bixby. That was our first farm.
And Bixby is South Dakota or North Dakota?
No, it's South Dakota. That's the one we called the tin house, only because it had a tin roof, and we used to hear the rain on the roof, and so it was tin house to us kids. It had 3 rooms, big, because everything wasn't separated like today, where you have a living room and a kitchen, and mother cooked on one end, and our dining table was on the other end. And when people came to visit, you just sat, right there in your dining table, practically.
On it?
Not on it.
Well, no, not on it, sweetie, but
Chairs. But they didn't have a living room where they sat around the TV.
On it.
no
So
TV.
again, no
TV.
electricity,
No TV.
no running water.
No running water.
You had outhouses and
Yes,
and water.
outhouses. We might have had a radio, and it ran by battery. The radio I remember it was a great big old thing, and it had the battery alone was like that. It was stood about that high, and it was about that long, and it fit right in the back of the radio. It took up the whole space. Used to have to send away to Sears Roebuck and get a battery.
And so you got your water from a nearby little creek or?
Yeah, it was either a creek or a well that they had. I know in Bixby we had a pump where we used to have to go get our water and bring it home in cream cans and buckets. And we moved to Bixby.
So you lived in that house for how long?
I lived in that house, or we lived in that house till I was probably 6.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 5 or 6.
And so do you remember like playing out with your brother then, or where, what do you remember?
Oh, I remember, yeah, and
Just daily life there.
yeah. I remember I thought that little hill was awfully big, but it's not. They tell me it's not.
What little hill?
I've never seen it.
Mm-hmm.
As you came out of the house, you went up the hill, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and my dad used to have haystacks up there, you know, that we used to slide down all the time, climb up and slide down.
Uh-huh.
Well, I thought that hill was really tall,
Uh-huh.
but again, I was little, so to me it was, but it's not. They tell me that it's just a little,
Mm-hmm.
just a very little hill.
Mm-hmm. And so were the horses around at that time?
Horses, we had,
No, the ones that would, the ones you were afraid of?
oh no, oh well, yeah, they probably were, not, I didn't know so much, cause I didn't venture too much out of the yard, you know, then.
Mhm.
The other ones, they ran all over the place. Darlene and Mary used to chase rabbits in the winter.
Mhm.
They used to jump up and down on the ice and chase the rabbits out of the They were always running, chasing rabbits.
So at this house, did you go out, is this the one where you went out in the snow to find your dad when he was working and you guys didn't have shoes on, and
Oh, yeah,
was that this house or was
that was that house, but that wasn't me. That was
Okay.
that was the older ones. That was Happy and Joy
Uh-huh.
and Curtis.
So what did they do?
Well, he was out feeding the livestock one winter, and Mother wasn't home. I think Mother was in the hospital having Mary,
Uh-huh.
and so she wasn't home, and he. So we had these little kids to take care of. There was like 3 or 4 of them. He told them to stay in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if she was having Mary, that meant Joy was 2,
Mm-hmm.
so Curtis was 4, and Happy was 6.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They would run out when they'd go out in the snow and run up that big hill that I said was big, and they'd watch Dad down in the yard down at by the barns and stuff. And then when he was coming back, they'd run back down the hill, and he came home and seen all these little footprints in the snow, and they all caught pneumonia. Ended up in bed,
Mm-hmm.
so he made them sugar tips.
Which were what?
Cinnamon and sugar, and he wrapped it in a cloth, like a cheesecloth or something, and
Mm-hmm.
to keep them quiet and make them stay in bed.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he gave them to. And Vicks vapor rub, that's what he
Mm-hmm.
used to, and they all got well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, so that's where I grew up. Millions of butterflies, and I don't know what time of year, it must have been in the spring. When do butterflies come out?
Yeah, probably spring. I don't know.
First they're cocoons, so it could be in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Because aren't they, I don't know, butterflies come around California in the spring,
Mm-hmm.
but they'd be just swarms of them, just all kinds of them. And the trees would be running sap, you know,
Oh, uh-huh.
and so they'd be sticking on there eating, and I'd try to catch them, I could whack! And I'd
Swish 'em.
dead butterflies in my hand. I mean, it would have been great for somebody who collected butterflies. They could
Uh-huh.
have collected all different kinds. I mean, there was every
Uh-huh.
size and shape and I mean, every color imaginable. Just swarms of them too.
And,
We had a meadow.
Uh-huh.
You know, you think of a meadow of Bambi. Well, you'd have to walk through the woods where it was all, you know, trees. It was woods, and you'd come out the other end, and there was this big old meadow that Dad used to mow,
Mm-hmm.
and for hay.
Oh,
and put up the. Well, it's just a. It's
a
just
big open grassy area.
Uh-huh.
It-
yeah. Yeah.
mhm. So were there prairie dogs there as well?
There was prairie dogs, but they had to. They stayed in a certain area because we used to call it prairie dog home, and you could walk up there or something, and these little dogs,
Mhm.
little animals. They weren't dogs, but they pop out, you know. You had to be careful with your horse driving right through there because you could step in
Oh,
a
yeah.
prairie dog, and so the older kids would always ride horses, but not me.
Mhm.
I didn't like them. I was scared of them.
And they called you Sissy, didn't they?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Not because of that, but
No.
yeah. Darlene still calls me Sissy. Her
Mhm.
and Joy were the only two that called me Sissy. But my dad used to call me Silver Bell.
Mhm.
Silver Bell. It didn't stick like Happy did. But
Mhm.
he's the only one. Then they used to call me Honey.
So, any other stories from that house besides, like, playing? Like, did the boys come home from the war at that house, or?
Not well. Not at that one. I don't. I remember Johnny coming to the other one. Coming
So
home.
that was not on a reservation.
No,
Okay, the one outside of Bixby.
no.
Okay, so then you moved from there to.
We moved from there to Bixby to another farm. We lost that farm,
Mhm.
and so we moved to Bixby and had another.
So was that a great big farm? Like he would use horses and plow and
Oh yeah.
all that?
Oh,
And,
yeah.
And so did he take the food to town and sell it, that kind of thing, or? So
Um,
did he raise a lot more than just enough for you guys?
He-
Was the farm a source of income?
No, it was just.
It was just
Uh-huh.
for you.
He had big gardens and stuff, but it was just
Okay.
for us. Mother canned and stuff, and
Okay.
uh-huh.
Mhm. Okay. So then in Bixby,
So then in Bixby,
what kind of a house were you in?
we were in. It was a. I think it was part log house and frame.
Mhm.
It had.
So more modern.
Yeah, it was more modern. It had four rooms, a great big area for where the kitchen was, and
Like one level,
yeah,
Mhm.
one level. And then
and no electricity still.
there's still no electricity,
Uh-huh.
and no running water.
Uh-huh. And you lived there till you were how old?
I lived there till I went to school.
At 8?
I lived there even after 8. I lived there till I went to school when I was 10, and then at that time my folks left the farm because my father was not in good health.
Mhm.
So that's when they moved to the reservation.
So you lived there at that house for 4 years, about.
Mm,
I think you said
Yeah.
you were 6 at the other ones. So,
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
yeah.
So what kind of toys did you have? Did you have any toys at that age?
No, we never had toys.
Uh-huh.
We used to make our own. We used to take Lanny and I.
Nina.
Sometimes we just
No.
play with my dad's farm machinery.
And chase the chickens?
We used to chase chickens, yeah.
And make them do what?
Lay soft-shelled eggs. They would be so excited that
Nina, sit down.
they would they'd lay soft-shelled eggs.
Uh-huh.
Well, it was fun. We'd chase those chickens around, scare them to death. Yeah, or my dad had, it was a part of his machinery. It had two big old wheels and a bar in the center.
Uh-huh.
I guess it was probably like an axle log or something.
Uh-huh.
But we could hold it and run. So we'd stand by side and we'd hold it and push it and run
Uh-huh.
with it. And other times we just find a piece of wood,
Mhm.
like a stick or something, and we'd hammer on a. We'd go to because this was Bixby, and there used to be there was a store there and a post office, and at one time, I guess it used to be a town, more of a town than it was when we moved there.
Uh-huh.
Because there was some other buildings that were vacant, you know,
Mhm.
that run down and stuff that had
Mhm.
nothing in them. And so they had this big trash heap that had, like lids, you know, that you took off of a can, like
So
a
they were
coffee
metal
can.
lids, like the
Yeah.
kind you open up. Okay.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
so Lanny and I used to get them and we'd hammer them on a stick and push it around.
Uh-huh. Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I do remember getting the top one time at
Nina,
Christmas.
get down.
We went to a Christmas play and that the older kids put on.
Mhm.
And so they gave presents to the younger kids, I guess.
Mhm.
Probably the farmers got together and
Mhm.
so Lanny went and got and I wanted his because I had a top, you know, you just,
Uh-huh.
and it spun.
Uh-huh.
That's what I got, and he got a cowboy and a horse and it stood up